There is a moment when the world goes quiet. Not suddenly. Slowly. So slowly that you do not notice it at first. Most people think silence is peaceful. They imagine calm rooms, empty nights, soft breathing. But real silence does not arrive like that. It arrives when the noise you depended on disappears. The messages stop coming. The calls slow down. The distractions lose their power. And one day, you realize there is nothing left to drown yourself in. That is when silence starts talking. At first, it is gentle. It asks small questions. Why are you tired all the time? Why do you feel behind, even when nothing is chasing you? You ignore it. You reach for your phone. You play something in the background. You keep noise alive because silence feels dangerous. But silence is patient. It waits until the night gets longer. Until the room feels bigger than it should. Until you are lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to your own breathing. That is when it speaks again. Not in words. In memories. Things you thought you moved past. Moments you never explained. Conversations that ended without closure. Silence does not bring new pain. It brings back what you buried. And the hardest part is this. You cannot argue with silence. You cannot rush it. You cannot scroll past it forever. Because eventually, life gets quiet for everyone. And when it does, you find out who you really are when nothing is distracting you. This is not a story about being alone. It is a story about what happens when you finally hear yourself. And the silence has only just begun. Silence changes when you stop running from it. At first, you keep expecting the noise to come back. A message. A call. Something to remind you that you are still connected to the world outside your head. But it doesn't come. And that is when you start to notice how loud everything used to be. The constant updates. The background voices. The small distractions that filled every gap so you never had to sit with yourself for too long. Without them, time feels different. Minutes stretch. Hours lose their shape. A single evening can feel longer than an entire week once did. You sit in the quiet and suddenly remember things you were never trying to remember. A version of yourself that laughed more easily. A plan you once believed in. A moment where life could have gone in a different direction. But didn't. Silence has a way of removing excuses. You can no longer blame the noise. You can no longer say you were too busy to notice how you felt. Because now, there is nothing else to focus on. Some people try to fight this stage. They fill their days with movement. They stay busy on purpose. They exhaust themselves just to avoid the moment when everything stops again. But silence always finds the cracks. It shows up late at night. In the pause between one task and the next. In the seconds after you turn something off and sit there, not ready to sleep. That is when you start having conversations in your head. Not imaginary ones. Real ones. Things you wish you had said. Words you held back to keep the peace. Questions you never asked because you were afraid of the answer. In silence, those conversations finally finish themselves. And sometimes, you don't like how they end. This is the part where people get uncomfortable. Because silence stops being empty. It becomes honest. And honesty, when you are not ready for it, can feel heavy. But silence is not here to hurt you. It is here to slow you down enough to notice what you have been carrying. And whether you are ready or not, it is not going anywhere. The quiet is no longer outside of you. It has moved in. Silence does not rush you. It lets you sit there long enough to forget why you were running in the first place. You start noticing small things. The way your breathing changes when you stop moving. The sound of the room settling. The weight of your own presence. This is usually when people realize something uncomfortable. They were never afraid of silence itself. They were afraid of what silence would reveal. Because once the noise is gone, there is no distance between you and your thoughts. And your thoughts have been waiting. They arrive slowly at first. Not as words, but as feelings you cannot quite explain. A tightness in your chest. A sense of being behind, even when you don't know what you're chasing. You try to name it. Loneliness. Regret. Restlessness. But none of those words feel complete. Silence does not give you clear labels. It gives you questions. Why do you feel tired even after resting? Why do familiar things feel empty now? Why does the future feel heavier than the past? There are no immediate answers. And that is what makes this part difficult. Most of life teaches you to respond quickly, to react, to fix, to move on. Silence teaches you the opposite. It asks you to stay, to sit with feelings that do not resolve themselves right away, to notice patterns you have been repeating quietly for years. In the quiet, you begin to see how often you chose comfort over honesty. How many times you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. How often you adjust yourself to fit situations that never really fit you. These realizations do not arrive dramatically. They arrive gently. And somehow, that makes them harder to ignore. This is the point where silence stops feeling passive. It starts feeling intentional. As if it is giving you space. Not to punish you, but to let you finally see yourself without interruption. And that can feel overwhelming. Because seeing yourself clearly means admitting things you have been avoiding. About what you want. About what you've outgrown. About what no longer feels like home. Silence does not demand change. It simply waits for you to acknowledge the truth. And once you do, the quiet begins to feel different. Not lighter. Not easier. Just honest. This is where the noise used to save you. And now, there is nothing left to hide behind. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels calm. It feels heavy. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just present. It sits with you when you wake up. It follows you through the day. It waits for you at night. And no matter where you go, it is already there. This is when people start to feel tired in a different way. Not the kind that sleep fixes. The kind that comes from carrying things you never allowed yourself to feel. Silence does not shout these feelings at you. It lets them surface slowly. A sense of disappointment you never named. A quiet grief for versions of life that never happened. A realization that some chapters ended without ever giving you closure. You begin to understand that you did not lose these things suddenly. You drifted away from them. One choice at a time. One compromise at a time. One moment of later that never arrived. Silence makes time visible. It shows you how long you have been surviving instead of living. How often you postponed yourself. How many days you treated as something to get through, rather than something to be inside. This is where the weight settles. You feel it in your chest. In the way you sigh without realizing it. In the way happiness feels distant, even when nothing is wrong. And the hardest part? There is no single moment to blame. No clear mistake. No dramatic failure. Just a slow accumulation of unspoken truths. Silence brings them all into the same room. And for a while, it feels like too much. You may start wondering if something is wrong with you. Why you feel this way when your life looks fine from the outside. Why the quiet feels heavier than any noise ever did. But silence is not exposing you to shame you deserve. It is exposing weight you were never meant to carry alone. This is where many people try to escape again. They look for noise, for distraction, for anything that will make the feeling go away. But silence does not fight you. It simply remains. And slowly, you begin to realize something important. The weight is not coming from silence itself. It is coming from everything you have been holding in without space to release it. Silence did not create this heaviness. It revealed it. And now that you see it, the question is no longer whether the silence will stay. The question is what you will do with what it has shown you. Silence does not ask you to fix everything at once. It does not demand answers. It does not give you instructions. Instead, it gives you space. And for the first time, you begin to notice how rare that is. Most of your life has been about responding, meeting expectations, keeping up, holding yourself together. Silence removes the audience. There is no one watching, no one judging how well you are coping, no one expecting you to explain yourself, just you and the quiet. At first, that freedom feels unfamiliar. You don't know what to do with it. You wait for the pressure to return. You brace yourself for the next demand. But nothing comes. And slowly, something soft begins to happen. Your thoughts stop racing. Your breathing settles. The tension you were carrying without noticing starts to loosen. Not because your problems disappeared, but because you are no longer fighting them. Silence teaches you that not every feeling needs to be solved. Some of them need to be felt. So you let yourself feel tired, without apologizing for it. You let yourself feel unsure, without rushing to label it as failure. You let yourself feel empty, without immediately trying to fill the space. And in doing that, the weight begins to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough for you to notice the difference. You start paying attention to what drains you, what feels forced, what you have been tolerating simply because it felt familiar. Silence sharpens your awareness. It shows you where you have been giving energy without receiving anything back, where you have been shrinking to stay comfortable, where you have been quiet when something mattered. This is not a moment of regret. It is a moment of clarity. Silence is no longer something happening to you. It is something working with you. And for the first time since the noise disappeared, the quiet does not feel like absence. It feels like space. Space to rest. Space to notice. Space to begin again, slowly, honestly, without pressure. Silence does not disappear once you understand it. It changes how it feels. What once felt heavy now feels steady. Not comforting. Not uncomfortable. Just present. You begin to realize that silence is not something to escape. It is something you move with. It follows you into the small moments. Walking without headphones. Sitting without reaching for your phone. Letting pauses exist without filling them. At first, those moments feel exposed. As if you are doing something wrong by not distracting yourself. But nothing breaks. The world does not collapse because you stopped reacting. People do not disappear because you took a breath before responding. Life continues. And you continue with it, more aware than before. Silence gives you a different kind of strength. Not the loud kind. Not the visible kind. the kind that comes from knowing where you stand with yourself. You start making quieter choices. Not because you are afraid, but because you are listening. You notice when something feels off sooner. You stop explaining yourself as much. You give yourself permission to pause before saying yes. Silence sharpens your intuition. It helps you recognize the difference between what feels familiar and what feels right. Between noise that excites you and noise that exhausts you. And slowly, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop asking, "What should I be doing right now?" and start asking, "What do I need to be honest about?" These questions do not create instant clarity, but they create alignment. You feel less scattered, less pulled in every direction, less pressured to become someone else just to keep up. Silence teaches you that you do not need constant movement to be progressing. Sometimes staying still is the most intentional thing you can do. This is the part no one talks about. The part where quiet becomes a companion instead of a threat. And once you experience it, you stop needing the noise to feel alive. Silence was never meant to keep you still forever. It was meant to prepare you. Once the noise fades, once the weight softens, once you stop fighting the quiet, you begin to see things more clearly. Not the world, your direction. Silence shows you patterns you could not recognize before. Where you have been repeating the same choices. Where you have been saying yes out of habit instead of intention. Where you have been waiting for permission that was never coming. In the quiet, you realize something important. No one was holding you back. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. You were moving at the speed of the noise around you. And once that noise disappeared, so did the illusion of urgency. Silence removes false deadlines, false pressure, false comparisons. You stop measuring your life against timelines that were never yours. This is when small shifts begin to matter. You choose rest without guilt. You step away from things that drain you, even if they once felt important. You speak more carefully, not because you are afraid, but because you mean what you say. Silence gives you the courage to disappoint expectations that were costing you yourself. That courage does not feel dramatic. It feels quiet. It feels like choosing honesty over approval. Like leaving space instead of filling it. Like trusting yourself without needing constant validation. And something else happens here. You begin to feel present. Not excited. Not motivated. Just here. You notice the texture of moments again. The way time slows when you are not rushing through it. The way life feels fuller when you are actually inside it. Silence does not promise you a new life. It gives you access to the one you already have. And for the first time in a long while, that feels like enough. The quiet has done its work. Now, it is asking you something simple. Not to change everything. Just to move forward. Without abandoning yourself again. Silence does not stay forever. Not because it leaves. But because you no longer notice it the same way. It becomes part of how you move through the world. How you listen. How you choose. You still hear the noise when it returns. The demands. The expectations. The constant pull for your attention. But it no longer owns you. Because you have learned what it sounds like underneath everything else. Your own voice. Not the loud one. Not the one shaped by urgency or comparison. The quiet one. The one that notices when something feels wrong. The one that knows when you are forcing yourself forward instead of allowing yourself to move. The one that reminds you to pause before you disappear into distractions again. Silence taught you how to hear that voice. And once you hear it, you don't lose it easily. Life will still get busy. There will still be days that blur together. Moments where you feel pulled away from yourself. But now you know how to return. Not through escape. Not through noise. Through stillness. Silence was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to reconnect you. To yourself. To your pace. To the parts of you that were waiting to be heard. And as this moment fades, as the quiet settles into something softer, remember this. You don't need to fill every space. You don't need to rush every pause. You don't need to be loud to exist fully. Sometimes, the most honest thing you can do is listen. And when the world gets quiet again, you'll know what to do.